Thanks for tuning in to Howe's Things, a podcast from the David A. Howe Public Library. I'm your host, Nick Gunning. Now listen, my love of Christmas books is a well-documented fact. I've talked about it for years and years on the All the Book Show, as well as in our inaugural episode of this podcast where Bo Hutchings and I hashed out some truly spectacular Christmas fiction. We had a good time with it, and I gotta say, each year I'm looking for new authors to add to my repertoire of regulars that I always go back to year after year. My guest today is one of the originals. One of the ones that I found a long time ago, and most years since I first picked up her book, The Christmas Dog, I have found a Melody Carlson book to get me through the holiday season. So my guest today is Melody Carlson, the award-winning author of over 200 books. When we get into this a little bit in the interview, not even she knows how many books she's written, so it's a high number. But they're for all ages, and they're across a wide variety of genres. She's a winner of many awards, including, just to name a few, a Romantic Times Career Achievement Award, a RITA Award, and a Carol Award for Young Adult Fiction. In 2019, her book All Summer Long was adapted as a film for Hallmark, hopefully the first of many of her books that's going to get that treatment. And some of her recent works this year include the novels The Happy Camper and The Christmas Swap, and we get into The Christmas Swap a little bit in this episode. So please welcome to the show, Melody Carlson. Melody, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. Since Christmas is just around the corner, I thought maybe we'd start with a little bit of Christmas book talk.
Okay, good.
Many years ago, I'm a big fan of Christmas books, and I was looking for something Christmassy, and I'm a dog person, so I was like, well, I need Christmas and I need a dog, and that's how I stumbled across your book, The Christmas Dog. It was just right, so that was a lot of fun for me to read, and in subsequent years, I read The Christmas Pony, I read Your Christmas Cat, and so on, so you definitely got my number. So I guess my first question here is, what comes first for you in the writing process? Do you have characters that sort of pop into your mind, or is it a setting that you want to explore? Is it just a title that pops in your head and you go from there?
It's really all of the above.
Sure.
I mean, sometimes it's even a dream. I've done a couple Christmas books that were straight out of a dream, just like a scene in the dream where I'm like going, now what? How did that happen? And so I'd have to write the book to sort of chase that trail down. But
okay.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a character that is interesting. One of my Christmas books was a woman who just got out of prison and ended up playing Mrs. Santa, and she was the inspiration. This year's book, it was kind of the idea of trading houses.
Yeah.
So it's different with every book almost. Yeah.
Okay. Now I know. I mean, looking at your output, it's impressive, a little amazing that you have so many published works. So I know that you're writing across all genres and things, but I'm wondering specifically when you sit down to write a Christmas book, like how do the goals change there? Like what is it you think that makes a good Christmas book?
The first one that I wrote was a long time ago, and oddly enough, I was trying to write a Christmas book, but it's almost the least Christmassy of my books.
Oh, really?
but it was also well loved. It was called Angels in the Snow, and what I learned is that I did a mirror after. I think I'm on like 22 this year or something. Mm-hmm. Just a good, heartwarming story, with the Christmas setting. To me, that's a good Christmas book. And sometimes I think I tried harder to make it Christmassy, and then other times it's just, let the story lead and have the setting and, goodwill toward men and peace on earth. Yeah.
Well, I've read tons of Christmas books, and I feel like when I'm looking for one, I always want like just the right amount of that nostalgic vibe, just a touch of schmaltz in there, maybe, just something that feels warm and festive, and that's something I always find in your Christmas books. I think they just hit the tone just right, so it feels familiar and it feels new at the same time. And now you said with Christmas Swap, the idea came to you because you were thinking about the idea of a house swap. Can you talk a little bit about those settings and about what went into writing the Christmas Swap?
Sure. I think part of the inspiration was it's always kind of sounded fun to me to do a house swap, not necessarily at Christmas time, but just to go explore somebody else's world and let them come to mine. And we happen to live in a place that is lovely, snowy, very traditional Christmassy. So I don't really want to trade
Right.
my Christmas world.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of the idea that this guy who lives in Colorado. I'm in Oregon, but in the mountains in Colorado in Breckenridge, and has a beautiful home that is ideal. I mean, like, I think maybe I would swap with him.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. Yeah, I do it.
Because it's really nice, and he's just, his background is he's a person who didn't grow up with money, but he became a successful songwriter, so he invested in this beautiful home. And then, of course, people in Arizona, some of them want snow, some of them don't. And then his family, of course, some of them want the sunshine and some of them don't.
Yeah.
And, originally when I started writing the book, I thought I was going to tell more about the Arizona story, but the Breckenridge one just took over, and they're just, novellas, Christmas novellas, there's a shorter page count, so you just don't have to. Besides, it was a lot more interesting up in Breckenridge than it was in Arizona. I'm sorry for anybody who's in Arizona.
Well, it's funny just how important snow has sort of become with Christmas. I remember when I was a kid, we spent one year visiting my grandma was down in Florida, and so we did Christmas in Florida, and it just it's very, if you're used to snow, it is a weird change there. So, yeah, I think, I like how Emma, the character in the book, had never even seen snow. And so to come and, be sort of wrapped up in all that, I thought was a fun hook for the story and fun, journey for that character to take.
Right. We were actually in Maui one year, right up almost, I think it was about a week before Christmas when we came home. And so, they had all of their Maui Christmas things going on, and it was just, to me, it was just sad. I mean, that's terrible, but it was just and then we came home and we'd had such a dump of snow. It was so much snow that we couldn't even go in the woods and get a tree like we would normally do, but I was just so happy to get back home.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I love the changing of seasons. I mean, even when that means, we're going to the coldness of winter, I like experiencing all that.
I do too.
Now, I mentioned sort of earlier that your work certainly is far, far beyond just Christmas books, so I want to talk a little bit about that, because as I was looking over your back catalog, I mean, the sheer number is impressive. So do you know what your count is right now, your official count of how many published works you have? It's over 250 at least, isn't it?
I don't think anybody knows. My husband keeps saying it's 300. My agent, she sometimes tries to make a list, but it's, I quit counting. We all kind of quit counting at 200.
Sure, yeah.
And I always tell people, there's about 50 of those books that are kids' books, so that's a little easier to get that number up there. But I know there's easily 200 that are, women's novels and teen novels and other too. So it's a lot of books.
Yeah, definitely. How does that happen? When I look across, because you mentioned children's books, teen books, adult books, I mean, you're covering all ages, and you're really covering all genres. I see some historical fiction in there, Christian fiction, Christmas fiction, of course. I even saw a little fantasy creeping in there. So, I mean, how does it, I mean, it's nice work if you can get it. How did it happen for you?
Yeah, well, like with all writers, it started out a little bit slow.
Sure.
Although I have to say it wasn't that slow. But because I really wanted to write fiction, and the publishers that I was submitting with and editors I was working with, they weren't doing a lot of fiction. So one of the editors said, "Could you write a nonfiction book?" So I'm like, okay. And I did. And that was the first book I got published. And then I had such a back pile of books that I'd written in the meantime, because I write really fast.
You'd have to, yeah.
Guess that. Then, within a year, it was just boom, 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 and people couldn't even believe how that was even possible. But I just, because I was busy at the time, not that I'm not busy now, well, not as busy, but I had, kids in schools, part of PTA. I was running a group home daycare center, that was the first book I wrote about. I had very little time to write, so when I got on my little typewriter, I wrote really, really fast. And since then, I've always written fast. And in fact, if I try to slow it down, I end up losing threads and kind of get bored with it. And so I just go at the speed I want to go.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you must have a good way to organize your thoughts, because to prioritize that time when you sit down and just be able to push it right out there. I mean, that must be a great feeling, really.
It is, and it's my job now. I've been doing it full time for 20 years.
Wow.
Now, I used to do it while I was working, and that kept me writing fast. But even when I was full-time at it, I just kind of look at it as a job, go to my office, not first time, but, and stick with it. And, yeah.
So what was that feeling like when you first hit that point where you realized you didn't have time to have a job anymore, that writing was your job? Like, what was that realization like for you?
It was actually really stressful.
I bet.
Because I had a really fabulous job. I was working for a publishing company, and they had moved me up pretty quickly in the company just because of what I knew about writing already. And so it was really a wonderful job.
Yeah.
But the writing was just taking over, and finally I had to just make the choice and pull the plug on the job. And then it was scary because it was a year. My husband had kind of backed off on his work. He was a contractor, and we were going into winter. The timing sounded terrible, and so it did get kind of stressful. But I already had an agent, and she was like, "No, And that year, I won, I think, 3. It might have been more than 3 awards, like national awards.
Uh-huh.
And it was just so confirming that I had done the right thing.
Well, it must be a little surreal as well, right? I mean, it must be kind of surreal to find yourself suddenly winning things and just being a writer.
Yes, it was. And it was scary surreal.
I mean, this sounds like the making for a good Christmas book to me. I feel like...
Yes, I always need new ideas.
Yeah. And let me ask you about that, because, like I said, so many genres and things. I mean, that must be incredibly challenging. I wonder, is there a specific age group or a specific genre that you've tried that you've kind of stepped back from and been like, whoa, that was harder than usual?
Well, history is always, it takes a little more time, although I have to admit, it takes less time now than the first time I started doing historicals. Because, I was using books, and now, we've got so much access on the internet. But honestly, the one that I did and I had to step away from was the suspense.
Oh, okay.
The last one that I wrote, but I won't tell the whole backstory because it's kind of awful. But something terrible happened with one of my friends.
Okay.
And her kids. And I was in the middle of writing this suspense book. She's like one of my best friends. And it just really messed with my head.
Yeah.
And so it was hard to write about people running around with guns and shooting and all that stuff. So subsequently, I overdid the word count on it by 10,000 words.
Oh my gosh.
Accidentally. Yeah. It was like, I think I call it stress writing. And then I had to go back and cut 10,000 words out of it, which I'd never had to do before. Yeah, and when I was done, it was like, I'm done. I'm never writing another book again.
I understand why that would leave a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
What's your relationship like with your work? Obviously, that was a bad experience, but I mean, because you have so many, there must be some sense of like you finish it, you put it out there in the world, and you move on. Are there ones that stick with you, or are there ones that you sort of keep coming back to in your mind?
Yeah, there's there are, and I feel bad. Some of them don't, sure. and I know they still resonate with readers because I'll get a letter about some book, it's really specific, and I'll be going, what is that about? But some of them really do stick with me, and some of them I almost want to write sequels to, but time goes by and it's like too late to really do that.
Yeah.
But there was one that I wrote called Finding Alice that was about schizophrenia, which is kind of a heavy topic, and I wouldn't want to write a book like that right now because I don't think the world needs it right now.
No, we can all do something light at the moment, I think.
That's how I feel, but it really it was a wonderful experience because my son had been treated for it, so I kind of had to learn the hard way a lot of stuff, and then I kept getting asked questions and was trying to explain it. Finally, it just hit me, just write this book, and it was the first book I'd ever written. It's an adult novel, but in first person and present tense, so it was a pretty intense book, and it's been well received. It still is in print, and some people have even used it in college and things. So that one's really special. It's kind of near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a much more personal experience than it would typically be.
Right.
Now, when you're working, is it the sort of thing where you've got one at a time, and when you're done with that one, you move on to the next, or do you have a couple that are sort of percolating, and maybe you'll work on this for a little while, go back to this other one? What's that setup like for you?
Pretty much one at a time. I mean, sometimes I'll be in the middle of one and edits will come back on another one, and I have to take a little break. And occasionally I get distracted. Like right now, I'm I'm really supposed to be writing a historical novel that's set in the Old West.
Okay.
But I've been having the opportunity to adapt some of my books to scripts.
Yeah.
And I got a movie out last year, and then, of course, everything got all shut down. But there's one that's maybe it sounds like it's going to come out next year. And then I have one that's sort of like it. So I'm asking the publisher, would you mind if I push this one back a little bit so I could adapt another script? So then I'm kind of, my head's in two places at one time there, but I want to, But normally it's just one at a time.
Yeah. That seems like it would make the most sense just to keep that all straight in your mind. Let's talk a little bit about All Summer Long, because that's the one that just came out in Hallmark in 2019. Right. Is that right?
Last year, yeah.
So what? I mean, 20 years into this must be a rare new experience to be adapting your work like this. What was that process like for you? What role did you play in the production and all that?
Well, actually, I didn't get to adapt that one myself.
Okay.
When it got to that point, when I did go up there and watch it being filmed and everything, I was really wishing that I had adapted a couple of others, Christmas. And my stuff has been optioned for, quite a long time. Okay. But things get really close. Like the one I mentioned, Finding Alice, was optioned by Lifetime and came really close. And then they had writer's strikes, and they had LA fires and all this stuff. And then they had another story that was kind of similar to mine that was all ready to go in production, and mine wasn't, and yada yada. So, but I mean, there's been a lot of ups and downs like that. So when the first one happened with Hallmark, I didn't even believe it was going to happen until it was actually in production. But it was exciting. It was fun to go up there. It was filmed in Canada, although it's supposedly set in San Francisco. And when you watch the movie, you don't know. Yeah. But I got to go up there, and the boat was a real primary character in the story, which was kind of fun. But I learned a lot. And then what I was motivated to do after I got done was go home and immediately adapt my next novel that felt like it was kind of Hallmark-ish. Okay. And got it ready. And that's the one. It's called The Happy Camper, and it just came out in the springtime. Yep. And that's the one that looks like it's going to get to be a movie. So then I had written another book just this summer that's called, nobody even really knows about it yet, but it's called Home Sweet Tiny Home. Okay. Ooh, it's due to come out in the springtime, and that's the one I'm going to probably adapt. Okay. So what was it like? I mean, you said you were on set a little bit for All Summer Long. I mean, what was it like to see your book just come to life in front of you, to see actors saying your lines and that sort of thing? What did that feel like for you? It was kind of surreal, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, it was just I was just so almost overwhelmed by everybody that was there, and just impressed with who they were. Sure. And I love to learn, and so I'm probably just like a sponge, just sitting there absorbing everything and thinking, I could write a book about this. Right. Just the whole idea of all the people that work on it, and just fascinated by how they knew what they were doing and did it so well. And the whole thing was just kind of amazing. Yeah. So is this something that you feel like you're going to be more proactive in the future? Like, is this a new avenue for you to get your work out there? I hope so. Yeah. I was all getting excited because I think I have about 5 scripts that are kind of ready to go, or semi-ready to go. And so I was getting a lot of connections with people, and several people even besides Hallmark, and then COVID. Sure. Yeah. And it just was like, oh dear, and so that kind of was the damper. And like I said, I'm sort of used to it because it feels like we've done this before. But right now I have a number of things with a number of producers. I think I've got about 4 different things that are sort of percolating. Oh, that's great. At different levels. And so it'll be fun to see. And it's one of those things. I don't hold my breath. Right. Yeah. Have you done anything where you're just adapting, or you're just writing directly as a screenplay, or has it all been adapting existing works? No, I did. I wrote an original screenplay. It's been some time ago. I did it. I had taken an adaptation class, and then had gotten the software to do it, and I hadn't used it because I was just busy writing. Yeah. And then literally just the week after the 9/11 attack stuff happened, my agent just kind of went underground. It really freaked her out, understandably so. Absolutely. And I was freaked out too, and I didn't really have a current project. Right at the time, we were kind of waiting on some things, and I thought, I'm just going to get this software out, and I'm just going to write I'm going to play with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up writing a screenplay that it's actually under consideration. It's one of the ones. But that's just this really kind of crazy idea, fanciful thing. But anyway, and I loved it. And I wrote it extremely fast. By the time I got done with it, my agent was, back and talking to me, and we were getting ready for the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, and I would like to do that again. It's just usually I have a book, that's due, so I would love though to get more involved in film, and I've been saying that for years. And it's like I said, I felt like it was kind of almost going to start happening, and then COVID. So.
Yeah.
But now that we've got a vaccine, and they said that Hollywood's now kind of gearing up, and some of the people that I'm working with on one of the projects are getting really excited because they feel like everything's just about to open up, and that everybody will be wanting material because they'll be ready to rock and roll, and so hopefully we'll see.
Yeah. Well, and I think COVID aside, too, I think the landscape of that has changed so much even in the last 5 years with so many different streaming options and it's just such an increase in people out there looking for content that it's kind of a perfect time to be doing this sort of thing.
Right, and what I'm hearing, and it may just be because who they're connected with, is that people are wanting more family-friendly, cheerful movies.
Sure.
So I'm like, I can do that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Well, with so many in your back catalog, what would you recommend for somebody who hasn't read your books before? Where would you point them as this is the ideal place to start?
Well,
it's hard, right?
I know, it kind of depends on what they want to read.
Yeah.
Well, a Christmas book. Why not start with a Christmas book? Because
Works
that's
for me. Yeah.
good time of year for it,
Yeah.
and it's a good sample. And I think, my writing style isn't all that much different, whether it is a historical or suspense or whatever, it's still my voice. But, I think a Christmas book would be good.
Yeah. Now, do you have, I know you mentioned a couple here, but I wondered, is there one that you find you get the most letters or communications about? The one that you feel like maybe above the others is the one that people gravitate towards the most?
Well, honestly, I get more responses from teens, and I think it's because they're quicker to get on whatever. I even get handwritten letters from teens now, too, which is always sweet. So, a lot of my teen books have just really touched girls' hearts. Although I got a letter just a few days ago from this woman, and it seems like she was from New York. It's really one of the sweetest adult letters I've ever gotten, where she starts out by saying that she never was a reader, she didn't even learn to read till she was in second grade, and just didn't read, and somehow she picked up, and it was 2 or 3 of my Christmas books right before COVID from her library.
Okay.
And they looked, she started with a kid's book, that was it. She started with the kid's book because she thought that would be more her reading level.
Sure.
And it was a Christmas book, because I've written quite a few Christmas books for kids, too.
Mm-hmm.
And then she went back, and then she found, like, 3 of my Christmas books and took them home. And then COVID hit. It was kind of a funny time to be reading Christmas books.
Yeah.
But she said that she got so hooked that she was, saying, like, she read all my books, which is impossible. I read all my books that they had in the library.
Yeah.
But I thought that was really, really sweet.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I have something for everyone, so it'd be hard to say. Some of my historical series, I think, are really fun. I've got one that's set in World War I and one that's set in World War II. The one in World War II is called The Mulligan Sisters. It's 4 books, and each one of them features a different one of the sisters' stories during World War II, which is really kind of cool, a women's perspective. And set in San Francisco primarily. And then I have another series that's set in World War I that's called The Legacy of Sunset Cove, and it's also 4 books. And it's not that it focuses so much on the war, but it's that era.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually set in Oregon, and we were one of the first states that had prohibition. I'm one of the first states that had women's vote, which led prohibition. And then there was a lot of rum running and things like that. But ironically, the last book came out in March, I think it was, and it was all about the Spanish flu.
Oh, jeez.
So I was talking a lot of letters from people. How did you know?
Yeah, ahead of the curve there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a funny coincidence. Well, if people are looking for more information or want to know more about your work, what's the best place for them to find you online?
My website is melodycarlson.com, and it's a little frumpy and outdated. we need to do a little work on it. My son's been the one that's just kind of kept it going for me, but yeah.
Okay. What about social media? Are you active on social media?
I am on Facebook. I wouldn't say that I'm active, but I'm there.
Okay.
And barely there is probably more honest. But yeah, but if they go onto my website, they can sign up for my newsletter. That's probably where I'm most active. I try to send the newsletter out about once a month, sometimes more, sometimes less.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have anything else coming out this year? Was Christmas Swap your last for 2020?
It's the last one for 2020.
Okay.
There'll be some coming out in 2021.
Okay. Anything you can preview for us?
The one that I mentioned, the Home Sweet Tiny Home, should be out kind of early in the year, maybe spring. I can't remember.
Okay. Well, this has been great. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us this morning.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks. My thanks once again to Melody Carlson. As I said, my intro to her work was The Christmas Dog, but after that, The Christmas Pony, The Christmas Cat, The Christmas Swap, and many others are always a good holiday, festive time, so check out one of those books. The film, All Summer Long, based on her novel of the same name, is streaming now, and we have The Christmas Swap and a good assortment of her other work on the shelves right here at the David A. Howe Public Library. You can keep an eye out for her new book, Home Sweet Tiny Home, and you can find more at melodycarlson.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time here on How's Things.